is DrChrono, and what industry would you categorize this company in?
Yeah, so DrChrono is a medical records platform. It does medical records, practice management, medical billing for medical professionals.
I'm sorry, is it like a software?
Yeah, so it
Or,
does like charting for doctors. Essentially, a doctor can see a patient. They could bring their iPhone in the room, do medical charting. They could bring their iPad in the room, do medical charting. And then they could like go through the whole process of like seeing the patient, setting that encounter to an insurance company, the insurance company reviewing it, and then paying the doctor, all through like an iPhone, iPad, web browser, and then interconnected to like get the doctor paid.
it's very interesting. It seems like a really convenient thing to have.
Yeah, I mean, we were, I think we were really early in the space. That's how we like got traction.
Yeah,
The company launched when the first iPad came out. So the very first iPad came out in April 2010.
yeah.
And me and my co-founder, who's also a Stony Brook alumni, we just felt like we should work on fun things. And, Steve Jobs, this tech entrepreneur in California, said he was going to launch this thing called the iPad. And we're like, let's just start coding for the iPad and see what like we can actually like come up with. And we built the first version of the product, and it was like a hit right out of the gate. Like doctors wanted to use, go figure, an iPad of all things, to like actually see patients and like get information from patients. So that was like
Okay.
a big milestone for us. But it is web and iPhone as well, and it's in like cloud.
What was your like biggest failure that you had to overcome with DrChrono, and how would you say you overcame that failure? Like, what did you learn from it?
Doing any startup, it's an emotional roller coaster. And this kind of applies to all startups. I wouldn't say that there's a failure. It's like, how do you deal with like the unknown, right? Like that means like your
Yeah,
job is unknown. Will you be successful? That's unknown. Are you doing the right thing? Is that like, you go through this psychological warfare with yourself because no one cares. In the beginning of a company, nobody cares. Like,
yeah,
with when you go to Stony Brook, you have like a degree. That's the end goal, and you can get there because other people can get there. When you like walk out and like work on something by yourself at the start, it's very isolating. So you go through this really psychological, like mental test where no one's paying you, right? So you're under this pressure. You don't have health insurance, right? So you're under that
yeah.
pressure. How do you make any payments for food? Like if you want to buy like food, like your bank account will only go down. So it's a psychological experiment that you kind of put yourself through. And the reality is it's not for everyone, I would say. A lot of people glorify like what being an entrepreneur is. I think it's really not as exciting as people think from the inside. You're basically just trying a lot of very quick tests and trying to understand like what does a user want, what would a user use, and a lot of failure is just like getting a lot of no's. And I remember pitching I just remember like pitching VCs in New York City and them saying like, oh, there's no need for this. Is that failure? I could have given up, right? You could just give up if you want to. It's easy to give up and just like go find a job. It felt like failure a lot of the time. Like I was failing because like I wasn't like getting the results. Like you're like, oh, you look at Facebook, look at that story, like how easy it was on the
Yeah.
outside. On the inside, there's a lot of stress and turmoil and struggle and emotional things going on, and people are unhappy, and medical issues maybe or whatever like happening. Biggest failure, there was no like one thing I think that was a failure. I think there was a lot of like small like it's like boot camp. Like you go through these like experiments, and if you decide to quit, you would have failed. if that company was a failure, I would have felt bad, but it worked out really well. Like we got users over time, but you kind of go through these waves of like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? That sort of thing.
Yeah. So it's sort of just like bumps in the road, you would say, not exactly like a overall failure.
Yeah, I would say like in school, I was never good at like language classes.
Yeah.
I think I got like my worst grade in language class, and I really struggled. And chemistry, I remember chemistry being so hard at Stony Brook. Like I felt like I was a failure in it, but like, and my world is gonna end. But I just kept going. I was like, how do I just get through this?
Yeah.
Even though I'm horrible at chemistry, like.
Yeah. I mean, I completely understand that. Like, I'm in Japanese right now, and it's like I bombed my first test, and it's like that's kind of like the same thing I'm saying to myself. Like, how am I gonna get through this? You just got to keep on doing it.
Right. So I think,
Yeah.
there were a lot of like, I had ill family members. That was hard. That was not
Yeah.
a failure. I would say it was just mentally taxing because when you're not getting a salary, how do you help them more? If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that was probably the toughest thing for me. Another like tough moment wasn't a failure, but it was, one of my best friends worked with us and he passed away while we were working on the company. Out of nowhere passed away. And that was a tough moment for me where I was like, it was just like hard on everybody. I felt like everybody in the company was like really, I don't know. It was a small team. It was like 5 people, it was a small team that like when that happened. And how do you psychologically get through that? Like, those moments.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that experience. I'm sorry to hear about your friend. Yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
all,
That's
I think
it's a lot
that's
of
like,
mental strength you have to have for that.
yeah. I mean, let me ask you guys this. Are you willing to go into massive credit card debt for something you believe in? And you don't have to answer that, but that's like the level of stress and anxiety. If you decide I'm going to put $50,000 on my credit card, forget it. I'm just doing it because I believe so much. And then you have to like work to get out of that debt.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
a piece of it.
that's crazy for me to think about. Like
Yeah.
$50,000 just on the credit card, and then you have to make it all back.
I mean, that's the level of stress doing a start. That's, the reality of like the risk of it doing it.
Risk and reward.
Right. So it's risk versus reward. But, what's the other side of the coin? Like working for someone else? Like
Yeah,
that's
true.
the flip side. Like play it safe. But are you really safe? Look at all the layoffs happening like at Google and all of these other companies out there. Right? There's all these layoffs happening out there in the world. It's like sometimes building something is better and handling that stress is better because you are doing something for yourself and you feel more valuable, to the world. I mean, one of the biggest failures for me was I couldn't get a job at Google. Couldn't do it. Like I remember interviewing there and they were just like, you're not a fit. I'm like, okay. So that was a failure. Check. I applied to Microsoft. They didn't accept me. So that was a failure, but in some weird way, those failures like led me down this path of like doing something for myself. Didn't feel good for Microsoft to say you're not a fit. I'm like, okay, not a fit there.
How would you say your master's, because I saw you had a master's in computer science, how would you say that kind of like helped you out in your career and like starting DrChrono, would you say?
I feel like the undergrad at Stony Brook was very holistic. Like you had a nice blend of like different pieces. Like, you could pick a variety of different classes and it felt really like balanced, like a nutritious diet. It's like a balanced diet of like different like things and projects, and you get to interact with different types of people. When I went into the master's program, it felt really isolating because it was highly focused on computer science.
Yeah.
And I think that was a little hard on me because I liked doing the like chaotic side of it. Like I liked going from like different subjects to different subjects. When I left Stony Brook, I felt like, first I was debating, should I have gone for my PhD? I was like, I'm already in Stony Brook. I already am on this like track for like going into like academia. I should just go for my PhD, right? Like I should just do that. I mean, that was like the way I was thinking about like it, because I did my undergrad there, and then I did my master's there, and then I got through the master's program, and I'm like, maybe I should do something in like the PhD side. I felt like, I don't know, it was either like, you know, my girlfriend at the time was like, you know, I'm gonna go work out in industry, and if you stay and do this PhD, I don't know what's gonna happen. Like, and I'm like, oh, thinking about it, it's very isolating doing a PhD. It's more of like what like doing a master's is. It's like you're going deeper into a subject, and kind of it's a very specialized subject that only so many people know. I decided, let me just not do that for a bit, and maybe I'll go back later and do that. Started to apply for a lot of jobs. I think it helped with the interview process more than anything.
Yeah.
It kind of gives you like this like checkbox. I don't know if I interviewed well back then. I think I was very, I don't know, rusty. But I had masters on my, on my resume. And I went into that one startup and they saw the masters. I think that for them was like, it kind of gave me an in to that company. Did it help me? Yeah, I would say so. Like, I really I learned a lot about databasing. Like, I learned a lot about like programming. I was really at that startup very isolated because there's only 2 developers. It helped me manage, like, to understand the concepts a little bit more and like what I needed to like work with when I was at that startup. So it helped in the early days. I think now it also helps in some way. When people talk about like, I don't know, recursion or an array of numbers, like, it's kind of like I've gone through the boot camp of Stony Brook.
Yeah.
I think that sticks with me. So there's a few ways that it helps.
You sort of already answered this in a way, because you said the company was going steady when you first started off. But I would say like, so the question is, what moment throughout your 14 years of working with DrChrono did you feel the company was successful, and where you feel like things were like finally going steady?
I've always been like humble in the sense that all companies will fail. Every company will fail. The big ones, the small ones, everything will go away. Domino's Pizza will go away. Your favorite video game company will go away. Apple will go away. And it's a matter of how long can a company sustain itself. I don't know if there's companies older than 500 years, like, in the world. So I felt like the harder you work and the more nimble you are, the chances of success will happen at like a greater rate. And I think I'll give you an example. Like, this is happening right now with like ChatGPT, right? Google was on their game, right? Like, they were really on their game. They were the best search engine in the world, and it's anyone who owns search really kind of like owns the world in some senses. So Google was like at the top of their game, and they still are. They're at the top of their game, but we see like instantaneous change happening when an innovator is not innovating as much as they should be. I read a book called The Innovator's Dilemma, where they talk about the fear of change creates failure. So like, if ChatGPT is like integrated into Google, they'll survive. But if they don't move fast enough, like Google, Microsoft, and OpenAI will like take everything from them over time if they don't like act fast enough. And I think being humble and realizing like you can be dethroned at any time from any part of your like, what you're working on is like what kept the company honestly alive. It was that. And I think people in the company felt that for a really long time. How do we innovate as fast as possible in any way possible, like with whatever's coming out? Like, there's things like Oculus Rift out there. It's like amazing and it's new. And I asked a 9-year-old, I said, if you were trapped on an island, would you want an iPhone? Would you want a Mac or a PC, or would you want an Oculus? And the 9-year-old said an Oculus. And I'm like, the world is changing really fast.
Yeah.
And
Technology, it's crazy how technology is just gonna jump from like decade to decade.
So I never felt safe in that sense. Like I always felt like
Yeah.
if you don't change and you don't adopt, you die as a company. And I think the people who are innovating very quickly are like creating new worlds. And it's hard when you're really big like Google because you're scared. Like if they change search, all their money goes away. You know, they have to show those ads. They have to show you an ad, right, to make money.
Yeah.
What is ChatGPT to that? Like if they put something in there that like takes away from that ad space, that's gonna hurt them in some way. So they're scared of like that new change. But anyway, I never felt like it was like a safe like ride, if that makes sense. The whole time.
I get it. I mean, you know, there's always external forces that, you know, come out of nowhere and they kind of, you know, if you don't adapt to them, like you said, you know, the company will eventually die.
How does your business look different now versus when you first started?
I'm not at DrChrono anymore, so I sold that company. Now I'm starting a new business now, so it's starting, you know, we're working on it. It's definitely a different experience because it's not in healthcare. Different market selling, like right now I'm doing it's a payments platform for payments for, think of it like PayPal for businesses or Venmo for businesses, where you're making payments flow easier for the business. I think I'm just adopting in different ways. Like we're selling to a new type of user. It's not just like the medical community. We're selling it to a different types of people. I have some like theories that really help, like because I'm in tech, and I think they're working well. It's like always work with like developers, like in one-on-one sessions, and always like work, you know, hire developers and smart developers. I mean, I'm in the tech space, so that's like where, you know, you can create things. But I think I always knew that. Like my first company, me and my co-founder were technical. So we were able to build it without like having investors or anything like that in the early days. I mean, this time around, I'm way more sophisticated when it comes to like investors and like what they're asking for from me as a person. I think that was a black box where Stony Brook didn't teach us about investors. Yeah. It's very different than like Shark Tank. I think Shark Tank is like a glorified way of thinking about it, but they're all different type of investors out there, and they're all like wanting different things. And you know, I think the Shark Tank team kind of makes people aware that, oh, there's these people called investors, but you know, they're just like a subset of like the whole investor community that's out there. So that's something I'm way more aware of and sophisticated about and understanding. And I think that's something that I learned just through all the years of like doing what I'm doing.
Where do you see your business in 5 years versus in 10 years from now?
Fintech or financial technology is like a really interesting space for me. I like learning about the flow of money. It's become like a interesting like area where I feel like, I mean, crypto has really like highlighted it for the world, where like crypto made people aware of like inflation, printing of money, you know, like printing of money creates inflation and people all want the same resources. So you know, you have to spend more of your money to get that product, and then the government can print more money to, you know, devalue your currency. I think that's something that really like was highlighted over the last few years, and I think people are more aware of that than ever before, which is amazing. But I think that also made me really interested in like that space a lot, where, you know, what is crypto? What does that mean for the world? What are payments? What does that mean for businesses? And, you know, if I envision the world in like the product that I'm trying to create with my team, it's allowing businesses to make payments in a really fast way and secure way, unlike ever before. Meaning, like, if I was to send you guys like a $10,000 payment, it should just be in your account like within seconds. And that's not really the case for a lot of payments that happen today. So is crypto going to be part of that technology? It would be cool if that actually became like a reality and governments were backing it in some way. But also to allow protection mechanisms, like if I meant to send you $10,000 but I pressed an extra zero, and then you got way more money, you guys would be happy, but I would be upset. But like allowing like smart machine learning to allow and understand like what the payment flow is and like how payments are flowing and what might be fraudulent or what might be incorrect, and allowing like businesses to become really more confident in that, because businesses are paying so many people and vendors and whatnot. I mean, I'll give you one example is like in Germany, the car companies were making payments for like doors. They would literally buy doors and put them on like a BMW. You know, they were getting fraudulent invoices and they were unaware of it, and they were paying out all this money to God knows who for doors that didn't even exist. But they were so busy they didn't track the inventory, so they actually weren't getting any doors. But they were just getting PDFs with like, you owe us, you know, $100,000 for these materials, and they would just pay it. I think it's just an interesting space, and like learning about that space and working in that space is really, it's a really interesting space right now. It's an interesting time. Crypto has a bad rep right now, but like, I think it's like the ARPANET days of crypto. I don't know if you guys know about ARPANET, but that was the original internet, and it was built for like war. The original internet was built because like if bombs were dropped on the United States could communicate with each other. I feel like that's where crypto is today. It's ARPANET. It's like version 1, everybody's going to lose a lot of money, but version 10 will be really good. And maybe the government will create it or something like that, but it's getting, you know, it's getting more and more interesting because like technology is accelerating, and with machine learning, technology is accelerating more, and Moore's law is happening and all these crazy things. So we're just going to, it's going to become a crazier and crazier world that's going to blow your minds. Like, I remember, you remember those like, they had these like big TVs. You remember those TVs?
Think about like the big back.
Yeah. So it's called a
Really stretch
CRT TV.
Yeah.
I remember like my grandmother, who was like 100 years old, I turned an LCD screen to the side, and I'm like, look, grandma, there's no back. And like, it was like, it blew her mind. Like, she didn't process it totally. I feel like that type of experience is going to happen to us, where like, you guys are not even going to have to touch your phone or talk, and your text will go out to somebody.
Wow.
Some insane, some crazy things are going to happen that are going to like blow us away.
Yeah.
That like, we're not even going to like comprehend like, how does that work? Anyway, that's, you know, I think that hopefully that answers your question a little bit about like where I hope the world is going and what I want to work on.
Infinity.
So you said that you went on a bunch of interviews when you were first out of college. What was your best way of like standing out in those interviews, trying to get like the job that you wanted and the jobs that you're applying for?
So, you know, I heard an interesting talk from someone, and this was a venture capitalist, and they said a lot of the founders that they see are dysfunctional, and they want to also add value to the world as like a person who's like wants to be a contributor in society. And I was like really listening to that and thinking about all the interviews that I was rejected from. So I don't know if I'm the best person to say. I'm not a good interviewer per se. I was a lot of no's. Like when I went out there, I didn't interview well. I think they would like catch cues, or I didn't say the right thing, or I don't know. I just wasn't good at interviewing. I felt like I was like screwing all my interviews up. It was just no after no after no. And I remember thinking like, how does one contribute to society when society doesn't want you?
Yeah.
And in some subconscious way, this is the way I was thinking, and I'm like, I really don't want to go through that interview process for more rejections. Maybe I can figure out a way with some friends from Stony Brook to not have to do that. And I don't know what my friend from Stony Brook was thinking that we started the company with. Like, he probably had his own thing going on. But psychologically, for me, that was a piece of it where I was thinking about the interview process and knowing like all the rejections that I had. Why not try a different way? And it wasn't easy to think like that. I think tips for people, you know, I've interviewed hundreds of people like for my companies, and I think some of the things that stand out are probably real passion. Like, you can sense real passion when you talk to somebody. Like, for my, my company now, that we hired one engineer, the guy right out of school just started coding a product because he wanted to. And he got some money from some users because he wanted to. And I'm like, that really just like resonated a lot with me, because I'm like, why would you do that? Like, and he's like, well, I wanted to just try it. And I'm like, that's a good, unique highlight for that one person that I don't think he even realized. And I was like, that's someone I want to work with. And there's also like energy around people. I mean, for me, it's like, you have to have like really good positive attitudes. Like, people that are just kind of like, they draw you down, you can sense it in a room really fast.
Yeah.
Right? Or nervousness. Like, some people get so nervous. I think I had that issue. You get so nervous, you just like freeze. Then you're asked a question, you're like a deer in headlights, just like nod, and they're like, hello. And I mean, that happens too. Like, people would freeze up in interviews, and I don't know if they were representing themselves well, or like it was just nervousness, but like, some people will write these beautiful emails. That helps. It helps. Like, if someone says like, hey, I've been following you and I just noticed this, and this, would love to talk. You take the time to write the email. It's really, really powerful. And one of my friends is like showing me cues on when it's just a template. I literally had this conversation last week. Like, here's a tip. Like, in LinkedIn, if you put emojis in your name, a lot of people have these like scripts that will like email blast like 700 people, and they'll take your name and put it into an email. And anyone with an emoji now, I know that they're not really trying. They're literally just using a script that like is like dumping hundreds of emails to people. I'm like, all right, their effort was like none, zero. So like, why respond to that email? So I think other interviewers like also have that, like, you know what I mean? They have their like toolkit. Me having my master's degree helped. I think that was like probably one thing. I learned that I couldn't have long hair. Like, I used to have hair. Used to be in like a rock band and have hair, and I was interviewing, and people are like, this guy doesn't look this guy.
Really?
Yeah, it was a thing. I mean,
Yeah.
like, if you have hair down to here and you're interviewing,
True, yeah.
you do get judged. And I felt it. And I was like, maybe I need to cut my hair. And I did. And that's what like led me to get that first job. So
So you said you're starting a new company. Do you think like your experiences with your old company and like starting that, doing it a second time, do you think it's gonna also be a really good success, or do you think it's like helps you in like now like what to do or like how to do it? Like, you think the experience helped?
I mean, yeah, the experience 100% helped. I think building a company the first time is harder because you just don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
The second time, I think I still don't know what I don't know, but I know more. So I feel like some things are easier than before. Like, understanding what investors want, understanding like what a slide deck should look like, understanding like what type of investor am I talking to, understanding like what's most important, like getting users, right? Getting revenue, understanding like, what is a cap table? Like I don't know if you guys know what that is. It's like all this stuff, like where do you incorporate? Like the first time around, I was very confused on all of that. And this time around, I feel like it's easier, but also like I have a larger network of people to like ask questions and pull upon. So that really, honestly, the network really helps a lot.
What is the differences in your companies, either old or new, like the difference in your application process to like, say, other companies that are trying to do similar things?
I think there'll always be competition. I think that there'll always be like competition out there. I think that there's this belief like, there's one winner will take over the world. And I just don't think it's that clean cut. Like That's like saying Stony Brook is so good, the other universities won't exist.
Yeah.
Like, it's that thinking. So I there will be competition, and there's a lot of competition out there in this space that I'm getting into, but it's a marketing game. It's a like who can build a better product game, and also like building a really good culture where people want to come work like is really important, and building trust with those people. You can build an amazing product and then your team hates each other, and they don't want to like work together, and then the company falls apart. You know, you can have an amazing team that can't execute because you hire too many salespeople and not enough like engineers. So I think it's like everyone is like, think of it as like sports teams. There's a lot of really good football sports teams. You know, you can't quite tell who's going to win this year versus next year. You know, there's always going to be competition, and I think that, I mean, that's one thing that I think is unique about me. There's companies that want to create like products that have never existed. Telepathic text messaging. That's like a crazy idea, right? You're like, that's not possible.
Yeah, no way.
It might be possible. Like if someone actually worked on that idea and was able to like build a baseball cap or something. I don't know. But that's an idea where I'm like, I don't want to take the risk. I go into industries that exist and I'm like, how do I incrementally make that better? And like take an idea and like incrementally make it better. Because even something a little bit better like wins a market. You see this shift happening with Facebook and Instagram now, and Instagram is fighting a good fight, but TikTok incrementally slightly better than what Instagram was, right?
Mm-hmm.
And immediately like the mind share of like everyone is like, oh, well, just use TikTok. Like, why would I use YouTube?
Yeah.
Why would I use Facebook or Instagram? TikTok is like pretty amazing. It's like, it's not mind blowing, but it's just enough better that people like
switch to it.
Right. So like, I think those are industries that I get interested in because like there are payment systems out there. They're just not that good. And like incrementally making it better, it will like shift the market very quickly. Like Disney Plus didn't exist like 3 years ago. It didn't exist. Netflix is like shaking in their boots because Disney Plus just like somehow executed and has more content, and it actually works. Not that you guys use it or you not use it, but it's like it actually like they executed. They have coming out with a lot of content, and people are like, oh, I can actually just go to Disney Plus instead of Netflix. Now Netflix is like, what do we do? And I don't know the answer to that, but like every company, like things shift quickly when you create a better product. I do feel like Oculus is like there's Oculus and then there's like a few other of them. We'll see who the winner of that is, like winners that come out of that. It's a really interesting like battle that's happening there. I think it's like interesting to see like what happens in 5 years in that space, because Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook, is just plowing all of these resources into that, and you've never seen anything like that. I'm like, wow, he's literally trying to redefine a space. I don't know why. Like, Facebook's growing or dying. Like, it felt old. It feels older. Like, how often do you guys log into Facebook? Like,
I don't even have an account.
I don't have an account.
But
crazy.
I feel like it's more of like an older generation. Like my parents use Facebook.
Yeah, so it's crazy that like the technology moves so fast, and it's like happening at such a light speed. So incrementally better is good enough to make like a hugely successful company.
Yeah.
I mean, is Tesla really that much better? Like the car company, is it really that much better than what's out there? They put an electric engine in to the same car. What they did, the electric engine is pretty cool, but then they also put in a lot of software to make it a big iPhone. It's a big iPhone with no like, there's not a lot of like mechanical buttons, but it's like literally a big iPhone. And I'm like, they didn't revolutionize the world. They're just like taking an idea that's working, and they said, well, let's apply like a cleaner, a way to drive this thing a little bit cleaner, but also like cram an iPhone, a massive big iPhone in there that can like help it drive itself. And I'm like, that's just taking ideas and like putting them in one unified thing and executing on that idea. It's hard to execute on ideas. Like that's one thing where I really respect Elon Musk. I'm like, he's executing. You can't deny that. Like I see Teslas everywhere now. I'm like, man, that happened fast. It only took like 5 years and they're everywhere. So incrementally better to the competition in the football game is like what I'm looking for.
You're sort of already talking about this, but this is more focused on DrChrono. So who would you say were like your biggest competitors while you were within that industry while working? Or, I'm sorry, while starting DrChrono.
I'm going to say something really strange. It's if your internal team is not working well, the company is like game over. I think you can build an identical product to someone else and actually have a chance if your team is like really like believers and they actually have fun working together. That's where I think the company was like hugely successful. I've seen a lot of competitors come and go. The internals of the teams weren't like working well. You know, our biggest competitor was like how hard we wanted to work internally and how well the team worked together. Because if the team starts to fight internally, other competitors can kill the company. Yes, there were like a lot of competitors out there. And yes, people told us all the time they will, you know, eat your lunch and you won't survive. But the ones that were fighting internally the most, I saw them like really just like falter and like not work.
Thank you so much, Daniel. It was very nice to speak to a Stony Brook alumni. We all appreciate your time.
Yeah,
taking
thank you
your
very much.
schedule.
Thank you.
Yeah.